When humanity silently walked away from the galaxy, the aliens laughed until their ships stopped flying, their medicine stopped working, and their enemies stopped losing. Now they face a terrifying question. Did we ever really survive without them? Ambassador Chen stood before the Galactic Council for what would be the last time. The chamber, a marvel of crystalline architecture that bent light into impossible colors, held representatives from 417 civilizations. Each had traveled across the stars to be here, to witness what they assumed would be another tedious diplomatic session. They were wrong. Distinguished members of the council, Chen began, her voice calm and measured. I come before you today not to negotiate, not to plead and not to argue. I come to inform you that the Terran Federation is formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted, not in anger, not yet, but in confusion. Ambassador Krixta of the Valorian Compact was the first to find his voice, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard. You cannot simply withdraw. The treaties, the trade agreements, the defense pacts will all be honored until their natural expiration dates, Chen interrupted smoothly. We will not abandon our obligations. We will simply not renew them. Humanity is going home. Councillor Vress, the ancient Thakreen who had led the council for 3 centuries, leaned forward in her suspended pod. Ambassador Chen, surely you understand the implications of what you're proposing. Humanity has been instrumental in everything, Chen finished. Yes, Counselor, we understand perfectly. That is precisely why we're leaving. The first month the initial reaction was laughter. Not from everyone, of course some species found the concept of laughter barbaric, but the sentiment was universal. Humanity was bluffing. They had to be. What civilization would willingly walk away from galactic society? The Valorian Compact, masters of interstellar commerce, were the first to feel the absence. Their quarterly trade summit arrived and the human delegation didn't. The Terran merchant fleets, which had connected the far reaches of Council space with remarkable efficiency, simply stopped taking contracts outside human territory. It's a negotiating tactic, Krixta assured his government. They want better trade terms. They'll be back within the month. But the month passed and the human freighters didn't return. The Valorians discovered that their own merchant marine, which had atrophied over the past century as they relied increasingly on human logistics, couldn't fill the gap. Routes that had taken days now took weeks. Goods that had been abundant became scarce. On the planet Thakreen, Councillor Vress received a simple data packet from the departing human embassy. It contained no text, no explanation, just a single image. A photograph of Earth taken from lunar orbit with a caption, "We'll be here if you need us, but you won't call." Vress found the message profoundly unsettling, though she couldn't articulate why. The cascade by the 3rd month, the Council's emergency session was standing room only. The Corthian Hive had discovered that 60% of their deep space communications relays were maintained by human technicians. When those technicians politely declined to renew their contracts and returned to Terran space, the Hive's interstellar communications network began failing node by node. The Meixeri Collective, a species of energy beings who had considered themselves above such mundane concerns, found that the specialized containment fields that allowed them to interact with matter-based species had all been designed by human engineers. The patents were freely available. Humans had never hidden their work, but understanding the principles behind the technology proved unexpectedly difficult. How did we not notice? Asked Collective Mind 7th, its form flickering with agitation. How did they become so integral to our infrastructure without our awareness? Ambassador Yildra of the Seraphi had an answer, though no one wanted to hear it. Because they never made a spectacle of it. They just solved problems. Quietly, efficiently, we took it for granted. The defense situation was even more dire. When the Krellix raiders struck at the outer colonies, as they did every few years, the Council mobilized its defense fleet. But the human tacticians who had, for the past 50 years, coordinated the multi-species fleet's movements weren't there. The defense was chaos. Ships arrived too late or in the wrong formations. Communications breakdowns led to friendly fire incidents. The Krellix, sensing weakness, pressed their advantage. For the first time in half a century, they actually captured a council world. The medical crisis doctor. Shalara had been chief medical officer on Station Babylon 7 for 20 years. She was a Valorian, considered one of the finest xenobiologists in the galaxy. But as she stood in the hospital wing, surrounded by patients suffering from Krellick's bioweapons, she felt utterly helpless. "Where are the treatment protocols?" she demanded. Her assistant, a young Thakreen, looked up from his terminal with compound eyes full of distress. "They're all here, Doctor. But they were developed by the Terran Medical Corps. The documents reference procedures and medications that we don't fully understand. There are notes saying, 'See human physician for clarification' on every third page." Shalara pulled up the protocols herself. They were comprehensive, thousands of pages detailing every possible complication. But they were written in human medical shorthand, assuming a baseline of human medical knowledge that simply didn't translate well to other species' medical traditions. "Contact the Terran Medical Corps," she ordered. "I've tried," her assistant replied. They responded within the hour. They've sent detailed clarifications and even offered to walk us through the procedures via holoconference. They're not refusing to help. They're just not here. And that, Shalara realized, was the entire point. The humans would answer questions. They would provide data. They would explain. But they wouldn't come. Not anymore. The galaxy had to learn to help itself. By the time they figured out the treatment protocols, 300 colonists had died. Deaths that wouldn't have occurred if human medics had been there. The questions nobody wanted to ask. The Council's emergency meetings became daily affairs. Counselor Vress, looking more ancient than ever, finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Why? She pulled up the human ambassador's final address, which most council members had dismissed at the time. Now, they watched in silence as Ambassador Chen's image flickered to life. "You want to know why we're leaving?" Chen's recording said. "It's simple. You've forgotten how to do things for yourselves. Worse, you've forgotten that you've forgotten. Humanity entered galactic society 300 years ago. We were the new species, primitive and eager to learn. And we did learn. We studied your technologies, your cultures, your arts. But we also noticed something troubling. You had stopped innovating, stopped adapting, stopped pushing boundaries. At first we thought it was maturity, the wisdom of elder species who had moved beyond the need for constant change. But it wasn't wisdom. It was complacency. You had each other to fall back on, and when one species couldn't solve a problem, another could. There was always someone else to handle the difficult tasks. Then we arrived. Humans who still remembered what it was like to have only ourselves, who still had that primitive drive to solve our own problems. And slowly, without anyone noticing, you started relying on us. For logistics, for medicine, for tactics, for innovation. We didn't mind. We were happy to help. But then we realized we weren't helping you anymore. We were enabling you. Every problem we solved for you was a problem you didn't have to solve yourselves. Every system we maintained was a system you didn't need to understand. Chen's image leaned forward, her expression serious. We've spent the last 50 years gently trying to shift responsibilities back to you. We've trained your people, shared our knowledge freely, documented everything exhaustively. But you've always had us as a safety net. So you never truly had to learn. We're removing the safety net. Not to punish you. Not because we're angry, but because we care too much to watch you atrophy further. You are ancient, wise, beautiful civilizations. You survived and thrived for millennia before we arrived. You can do so again. But you'll never believe that while we're still here to catch you." The recording ended. The council chamber was silent. The Krellick's war went poorly. Without human tactical coordination, the council fleet suffered defeat after defeat. Dozens of worlds fell. Billions died. The Krellicks, sensing an opportunity to break the council once and for all, threw their entire military might into the campaign. Emergency messages flooded Terran space. Pleas for help, offers of territory, resources, anything humanity might want. Some were diplomatic. Others were desperate. A few were angry, accusing humanity of abandoning the galaxy in its hour of need. The Terran response was always the same. "We have every confidence in your ability to handle this situation. However, if you have specific questions about tactical procedures, medical treatments, or technical systems, we are happy to provide detailed information. Information, always information, never intervention." On the station orbiting Earth, Fleet Admiral Okonkwo watched the tactical displays showing the Council's losses. Her jaw was tight, her hands clenched. "Ma'am, the Krelliks just broke through the Valorian defensive line. The entire compact is at risk." "Noted," said President Martinez, her voice carefully neutral. We could have a fleet there in 3 days, Okonkwo pressed. End this war in a week. We could, Martinez agreed. And what happens in 50 years when the Krelliks try again? Will we still be there to save them? In 100 years? 500? Some of them will die because we're not there. Yes. Martinez's voice was heavy. And that is a burden I will carry for the rest of my life. But more would die eventually if we continue to be their crutch. You know this, Admiral. We ran the simulations, Okonkwo did know. The sociological models had been clear. Every year, humanity remained central to galactic civilization. The other species became more dependent. Project forward 500 years, and humanity wouldn't be a member of the Council, they'd be the Council, whether they wanted to be or not. The other species would have atrophied to the point of being unable to govern themselves. That didn't make watching them struggle any easier. It was Councillor Vress who finally broke the pattern. During the darkest hour, when the Krelliks Armada was bearing down on Thakri itself, she made a decision that would shock the Council. Close the doors, she ordered. No more emergency sessions. No more debates. No more messages to the Terrans. But Councillor Crixtha began. They're not coming, Vress interrupted, her ancient voice carrying a new strength. Accept it. They told us why. They told us what they expect us to do. They believe we can handle this. The question is, do we? She pulled up a holographic display showing the entire theater of war. Look at this. Really look at it. What do you see? Disaster, muttered someone. I see patterns, Vress said. The Krelliks are overextended. They've taken territory faster than they can consolidate it. Their supply lines are vulnerable. Their fleet is dispersed. We have 3 times their numbers, superior technology and interior lines. We should be winning this war. Then why aren't we? Ambassador Yildra asked. Because we're fighting the way humans taught us to fight without understanding why those tactics work. We're following their playbook without grasping the underlying principles. We need to stop asking what would humans do and start asking what should we do? For the first time in months, something like hope stirred in the council chamber. The change didn't happen overnight. The council's first independent military operation was a disaster, a flanking maneuver that turned into a bloodbath because they'd misunderstood the timing requirements. But they learned from it, adapted, tried again. The Valorian Compact, facing economic collapse, rediscovered their ancestors' talent for trade route optimization. It wasn't as efficient as the human systems, but it was theirs. They understood it, could modify it, improve it. The Mixari Collective spent 3 months in deep meditation, their energy forms pulsing with the effort of true innovation for the first time in centuries. When they emerged, they'd redesigned their containment fields from first principles. The new design was different from the human version, less elegant in some ways, but more stable. And crucially, it was something they could maintain and improve themselves. Dr. Shalara revolutionized Valorian medicine by doing something radical. She stopped trying to replicate human medical procedures and started asking why certain treatments worked. Her breakthrough came when she realized that human medicine's strength wasn't in any specific technique, but in its systematic approach to problem solving. She developed a new medical framework built on Valorian biological principles, but human methodological rigor. The war with the Krelliks reached a turning point at the Battle of the Seraph Nebula. Councillor Vress, coordinating the defense personally, made a decision that no human tactician would have made. She deliberately sacrificed the high ground, appearing to retreat, then used the Thakreen natural ability to think in 4-dimensional space to predict exactly where the Krelliks would pursue. The ambush was devastating. Crixtha, watching the battle unfold, finally understood. We don't need to fight like humans. We need to fight like ourselves. The new normal 2 years after humanity's withdrawal, the Krelliks sued for peace. They'd expected an easy victory over a divided, dependent council. Instead, they'd found themselves fighting opponents who, tested by necessity, had rediscovered their own strengths. The peace treaty was negotiated entirely without human input. Both sides felt strangely proud of this fact. The galaxy was different now. Trade was less efficient. Routes that had taken days sometimes took weeks. Medical treatments that had been routine now required more effort. Technologies that had been maintained by human experts now needed local specialists who truly understood the underlying principles. But something had changed in the council species. There was a new energy, a new confidence. They were solving their own problems again, making their own mistakes and learning from them. innovating. The Valorian Compact opened a new merchant academy, training the next generation of traders in the rediscovered arts of their ancestors, enhanced by the lessons they'd learned from humanity, not copying human methods, but understanding the principles and adapting them. The Thakreen established a strategic institute, teaching multi-species fleet coordination based on their unique understanding of spatial relationships rather than human tactical doctrine. The Mixari Collective began publishing research again, real research, pushing the boundaries of energy-matter interface theory for the first time in centuries. Dr. Shalara's medical protocols spread throughout council space, credited as a true fusion of human systematic thinking and alien biological insight. They were becoming themselves again, but better, tempered by challenge, strengthened by necessity. The message 3 years after the withdrawal, Councillor Vress received an encrypted message on a private channel. It was from Ambassador Chen, now retired to a small farm in New Zealand. Dear Councillor Vress, it began, I hope this message finds you well. I've been following the Council's progress from afar. Humanity still maintains observers. Though I'm sure you know that, and I felt compelled to write. What you've accomplished these past 3 years has been remarkable. The innovations, the adaptations, the rediscovery of your own civilization's strengths. It's everything we hoped for when we made the decision to withdraw. More, actually. We expected it to take longer. I won't lie and say there weren't doubts. Moments when we questioned whether we'd made the right choice. Every casualty report from the Krellic War felt like a personal failure. President Martinez barely slept for months. Admiral Okonkwo almost resigned 3 times. The weight of staying away was immense. But we'd run the simulations. We'd seen what would happen if we stayed. 50 years from now, you wouldn't need us. You'd be unable to function without us. 100 years and you'd be our wards, not our equals. 500 years, and your civilizations would exist only as shadows of what they once were, wholly dependent on human management. We couldn't let that happen. You are too magnificent, too ancient, too valuable. The galaxy needs the Thakreen insight into dimensional mathematics, the Valorian genius for finding connections between disparate things, the Mixari understanding of fundamental forces, the Seraphi philosophical frameworks, all of it. But you needed to remember that you had these gifts, and you never would have, not truly, while we were there to lean on. I want you to know something, Counselor. The hardest thing humanity has ever done wasn't leaving Earth. It wasn't surviving our own wars and plagues. It wasn't even joining the Galactic community. The hardest thing we ever did was walking away from you, knowing you would struggle, knowing some of you would fall, trusting that you would ultimately rise. That trust was not misplaced. You asked me once, during our final conversation, whether humanity would ever return to the Council. I told you we would always be here if you needed us. That remains true, but I also said you wouldn't call. I was wrong about that. You should call. Not because you need us to solve your problems, you've proven you can do that yourselves. Call because we should be equals, partners, collaborators, not saviors and saved, not teachers and students. Peers working together because we choose to, not because anyone is dependent. When you're ready for that kind of relationship, when both humanity and the Council can meet as true equals, we would be honored to return, not as the species everyone relies on, but as one voice among many, one set of perspectives in a greater chorus. Until then, we'll be watching, cheering for your successes, mourning your losses, and always believing in your ability to thrive. With respect and admiration, Ambassador Jennifer Chen, retired. Councillor Vress read the message 3 times. Then she composed her reply. The reply, Dear Ambassador Chen, Vress wrote, her translation protocols rendering her Thakreen thought forms into human language. Thank you for your message. It meant more than you might imagine to receive it. You were right to leave. I hated admitting that even to myself, but it's true. We had become comfortable, complacent. We'd forgotten what it meant to truly challenge ourselves. You gave us a gift, though it was wrapped in hardship. The past 3 years have been difficult. We've made mistakes, lost lives that might have been saved if you'd been here, but we've also remembered who we are, what we can be. The Thakreen weren't always philosophers content to contemplate dimensional theory from our pods. Once we explored it, pushed it, broke it, and rebuilt it stronger. We'd forgotten that drive. We're remembering it now. I've watched the same transformation across the Council. The Valorians are trading not just goods but ideas, their own ideas, not yours. The Mixari are hypothesizing about the nature of reality itself, not just applying theories developed elsewhere. The Seraphi are creating art again, real art, born from struggle and triumph, not comfortable exercises. You asked when we might be ready to meet as equals. I think we're getting there. But you're right that we're not there yet. We still have more to learn about ourselves, about our capabilities, about what we can achieve when we must. There's something I want you to understand, though. We're not angry. Some are, perhaps. There will always be those who prefer comfortable dependence to challenging independence. But the Council, as an institution, recognizes what you did, why you did it, the courage it took. It would have been easier to stay, to let us continue to rely on you, to accept the power and prestige that came from being indispensable. Walking away from that, knowing the cost that took a kind of strength I'm not sure my species could have mustered. So thank you, for believing in us even when we'd stopped believing in ourselves, for trusting us with our own destiny, for having the courage to let us fall knowing we might not get back up. We did get back up, and will continue to rise. When we're ready, when we can truly meet you as equals. Not as the species who needs you or the species who resents you, we will call, and I hope you'll answer. Until then, know that humanity's withdrawal saved the Galactic Council, saved us not from the Krelliks or from economic collapse or from any external threat. You saved us from ourselves. With gratitude and respect, Councillor Vress of the Thakreen. 5 years later, the Galactic Council chamber looked much as it had 5 years earlier, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Representatives from 417 civilizations gathered once again, but now there was an energy, a vitality that had been absent before. Councillor Vress called the session to order. Distinguished members, we gather today to vote on a matter of historic significance. After 5 years of independence, self-improvement, and rediscovery of our civilization's core strengths, a proposal has been made to invite the Terran Federation to rejoin the Galactic Council. This is not the same council they left, she continued. We have been transformed by necessity. We've relearned how to innovate, to adapt, to solve our own problems. The question before us is, are we ready to welcome them back, not as saviors but as partners? Ambassador Crixtha stood. The Valorian Compact votes yes. Humanity taught us that true partnership requires mutual respect and independence. We have regained our independence. Now we can offer true partnership. One by one, the species voted. When the tally was complete, it was unanimous. Very well, Vress said. I will transmit the invitation. The message was simple. The Galactic Council formally invites the Terran Federation to rejoin as an equal member. We believe we are ready. We hope you agree. No pressure. No timeline. The choice is yours. The response came 3 days later, and it came from President Martinez herself, addressing the Council via hologram. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, she began. On behalf of humanity, I accept your invitation. But I want to be clear about what we're accepting. We're not coming back to solve your problems. We're coming back to work alongside you as you solve them yourselves. We're not returning as the species everyone turns to when things get difficult. We're returning as one voice in a choir of voices, each valuable, each unique. We'll share our knowledge as you share yours. We'll offer perspectives as you offer yours. We'll collaborate, we'll debate, we'll sometimes disagree. And that's exactly as it should be. The Galactic Council doesn't need humanity. You've proven that. But perhaps we can be better together than apart, not because anyone is dependent, but because diverse perspectives freely shared between equals create something greater than any single species could achieve alone. So yes, we'll return. But we're returning to a different council than the one we left. A stronger council. A more capable council. A council that remembers how to be magnificent. Welcome back, Councillor Vress said simply. The New Era Ambassador Chen, brought out of retirement for the historic occasion, stood once more before the Galactic Council. The chamber was the same crystalline marvel, bending light into impossible colors. But everything else was different. The Valorian trade networks now integrated human logistics with their own innovations, creating a hybrid system more robust than either alone. The Thakreen Strategic Institute collaborated with human tacticians, each learning from the other's fundamentally different approach to spatial reasoning. Dr. Shalara's medical protocols had been enhanced by human emergency response techniques, while human medicine had adopted Valorian diagnostic frameworks. It wasn't about one species being superior. It was about the strength that came from true collaboration between equals. Distinguished members, Chen began, I stand before you humbled and grateful. 5 years ago, I stood in this chamber and told you we were leaving. It was the hardest speech I've ever given. Today, I stand here to say we've come home. But I want humanity to remember something just as you remember. The galaxy doesn't need us. Not the way it once did, and that's exactly how it should be. We are stronger together, yes, but only because each of us is first strong alone. The Terran Federation pledges to the Galactic Council. We will share our knowledge freely. We will offer our perspectives honestly. We will stand beside you in times of crisis. But we will never again become your crutch. Because true friendship, true partnership isn't about being needed. It's about being valued. To the Galactic Council, may we continue to challenge each other, push each other, inspire each other to be better than we would be alone. Not because we must, but because we choose to. The chamber erupted not in confusion, but in approval. Species-specific displays of affirmation, crystalline chimes from the Seraphi, bioluminescent pulses from the Mixari, harmonic clicks from the Valorians created a symphony of agreement. Counselor Vress, ancient and wise, allowed herself something rare, a gesture of satisfaction in her suspended pod. Humanity had left them to survive the consequences, and survive they had stronger, wiser, more capable. Now they would face the galaxy together. Not as dependent and depended upon, but as equals who had chosen partnership over necessity, as it should be, as it always should have been.